Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and this is my husband Drew. And on this channel, we talk about life and relationships after leaving the church and do some commentary on the goings on in evangelical Christianity. Today, we're going to be providing our commentary on the Zelph on the Shelf and Bethany Beal collaboration. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Zelph on the Shelf. I'm actually a really big fan of their channel. I think they really do good work. And recently they flew out to San Antonio to meet with Bethany of Girl Defined, and her husband, Dave, and they filmed a little collaboration together. So we're going to be reacting to that today. I know we've all been kind of following the transformation of both Dave and Bethany over the last couple months. Colin Morgan came out with a collaboration with primarily Bethany and Dave. And I think it really gave the audience a different perspective and kind of humanized Bethany and Dave and Girl Defined in general.
Yeah.
And kind of showed that they're a little bit, Dave is definitely deconstructing, but it seems like Bethany is a little bit in the process of deconstruction as well.
Yeah.
Hey guys, editing Taylor here. I did want to clarify that Bethany has said that she is not in the process of deconstruction. To me, deconstruction means simply reevaluating your beliefs, and Bethany has voiced several times that she has reevaluated aspects of her beliefs, especially things that were kind of instilled in her as she was growing up. So to me, I do see her as deconstructing certain aspects of her faith. However, if she does not want to use the label of deconstruction for herself, that is totally fine. We shouldn't be forcing labels onto people that don't want to use that label. You will hear me talking about how Bethany is deconstructing, and that's just through my own lens. I do see Bethany as deconstructing, but again, if she doesn't want to use that label, that's totally fine. But then Girl Defined came out with a video on their channel about women in the kitchen, and kind of seemed like they were back to their old ways a little bit. They're kind of repeating a lot of their same talking points that we've seen from Girl Defined. And so I was kind of like, oh, maybe there isn't any growth there. But seeing this video, it kind of changed my mind again on Girl Defined, and I think provided insight on who I think Bethany really truly is, like genuinely who she is. So I thought it would be really cool if we reacted to that video today.
Yeah.
Like we usually do, we're not going to be watching the entire video. Although with this one, I really, really recommend that you guys do check it out. I'll link it down in the description because it was just really beautiful. I think it was like one of the most important videos in like the deconstruction space in a while, in my opinion.
In fact, I'm going to say we should link this in the description and you guys should just open it in another tab.
Yeah.
And like, if for some reason you're not going to watch the whole thing, then at least like have it playing in another tab, give them some watch time, because I think this kind of thing should be encouraged. And like Zelph on the Shelf is a small channel that I think is underhyped.
Oh yeah, very underrated, but like their stuff is so good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump in here.
Bethany, you held so much space for.
You're very sweet.
Like the level of, again, I said yesterday in the video, I feel like I could say anything and it would be safe.
The blue dress, gold dress conversation didn't end in fist fights.
Because we're still here together.
I felt really bad at dinner. I was almost like, I might have to go. I was like, I might have to like get a ride back or something. I felt like so sick. It just like really, my stomach was like trash. I like couldn't, like I like 3 bites of my salad. I was just like, ugh.
So to give you guys some context on this, apparently like the night before Sam and Tanner arrived, Bethany didn't like sleep at all. I'm not sure if it was because she was anxious about meeting them or what it was, but she just didn't sleep well. And the next day she was feeling really, really sick. So that's what they're talking about here.
But it was a big challenge for me because like, honestly, I've been telling Dave, like, I haven't like read a lot of the stuff that like y'all have all read like over the past few years, or like listened to a lot of this and stuff. And it's interesting to me, but like I can't speak the language. So it's like, it is a challenge to like be a part of something, but that you don't really understand. So you're more like learning and hearing, but not necessarily participating. And so it's like, oh, it's just a challenging personal experience, you know, which is good. Like I want to grow, I want to be challenged and and even know how to handle the physical sickness.
On a smaller level, like I do relate because when Tanner and Dave were talking, they have specific like areas of study that I don't really have. I just kind of pick it up through Tanner. Some of like when you're talking about Nicaea, I'm like, what's Nicaea? I've never heard that in my whole life.
I was shocked by like y'all too. It was just like you're just like an explosion.
I feel like we could probably get lost in a word cloud for a few days.
Yeah. I enjoy it.
So it's really nice for me to see Bethany saying all this here. I think she's really, it seems like coming from a place of humility, saying, you know, I don't completely get all of this. I'm not educated on a lot of it, but I'm willing to listen and grow. And I might not necessarily be participating in all the conversations, but I am listening and have an open mind.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really the first step to deconstruction. The first step is realizing like, oh, there's this whole world of knowledge out there that I previously didn't have any awareness of.
Yeah.
You're kind of overwhelmed in a sense because it's just a lot, and you want to learn, you want to grow, you want to figure out all of these things that you didn't know about before. And like, I think to me, it seems like she's in like the first stage, and that the first stage I think is the hardest stage, honestly.
Yeah, I think where she is it's really scary. I mean, speaking from my own experience, I remember when I first started thinking, oh, maybe I should research this a little bit more, think about this a little bit more, you know, looking up something or reading about something or just hearing somebody talk about something that wasn't like mere Christianity or the case for Christ, just seeing like a book cover pop up and the mere prospect that it might include something that could challenge me in any way, it made me feel physically sick. And I felt physically sick for months when I was deconstructing stuff and just the first stages. And so, I mean, we don't know if Bethany felt sick because of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's a scary place to be in.
Definitely.
And it doesn't matter if it's Bethany or if it's somebody else. If somebody's putting themselves in that position for the sake of building relationships with other people, you know, having a healthy relationship with her husband, you know, making new friends, like that's a commendable thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think that it's an especially hard place to be in, but more so when you're, you know, in this case, she's surrounded by 3 people that do know a lot more about this than she does, and that's intimidating. But also, you have the people in your life, because most of the people that she is surrounded by are conservative Christians. They're all saying one thing. You have the entire internet saying something else.
Yeah.
Like, I really can't imagine being in her position, and just the amount of I just go back to the amount of humility that she's showing here, because I think it would be so easy for her to, and I realize that they're on film and maybe it's like different behind closed doors, but I think it would be easy for her to kind of break down more or take out this like pressure that she's feeling onto other people, and like it doesn't seem like she's doing that.
Yeah.
We know that there's been a little bit of pushback about, you know, Dave deconstructing, but has there been any like commentary about you meeting with us?
Oh, I mean, yeah. It's been very interesting with in-person relationships and online. And that's been challenging to navigate, because in person, there have been people who have had very strong opinions in many ways. And it's been very confusing. Like, I'd come home and like talk to him after like meeting with certain people that I really respect, and like meeting with y'all and just even like, this sounds so horrible, but it's like people who don't just click me, you know, and just whether I should even be doing this, you know? And so it's like super confusing and hard, and like, what am I supposed to do? And I almost go into this mode of like, someone just tell me what the right thing is, you know, but it's like, what? So, I mean, again, I keep mentioning in our other video, I mentioned her, this older woman who's counseling me, and, you know, you would think, because she's like the most Bible, like she's like an ACBC counselor, which is like this form of counseling that's like the like very niche, super biblical, but she it's just so wise. Like, just she's lived many years. And so when I was sharing all of this with her, she was like championing it the most. And she was so positive and so supportive. And she just had this bigger perspective. She's like, it's like, she's more like, this is what Jesus did. Like, he didn't just be around people that just thought like him. He was around all sorts of people. And like, he was about loving and showing such kindness and grace. And like, if you can't do that in real life, like, what are you even doing? And so she just reminds me of like the true core values of Christianity. And so it's been confusing with other people being like against stuff like that. And it's like, we say like as Christians, like we want to be so loving and kind and gracious and like hospitable and having people like in our homes. And like, for us, it'd be like the core and like sharing the gospel. But it's like all of a sudden when it becomes real, like you're going to have people who are non-believers, like in your home and spending time with them. It's all of a sudden like fearful, like, oh no, but then you might stray or whatever. So you need to just be in your bubble with people. And so with in-person relationships, that's been confusing, but I'm super grateful for this older woman because I feel like she has such a level-headed, like central Christian value that, I don't know, it's been really freeing and has honestly changed my faith in a lot of ways to getting back to like that core value of what Christianity is about.
And that's kind of stage 2, if you want to simplify deconstruction, doing things, thinking things, saying things that get a reaction from your community and having to see how your community disagrees with itself, disagrees with you, disagrees on interpretations of core values of Christianity. I think honestly that is one of the most important experiences of deconstructing, is seeing the way that like your tribe comes into conflict with itself when certain issues are brought up.
Yeah.
And it's important for anyone, not just Christians, for anyone. And I'm, again, speaking from personal experience, that is really, really difficult and probably the part of like deconstructing that I think of the most, when I'm thinking of my time coming out of Christianity, I'm thinking about when people first start to know that I'm doing something different and casting judgment on me. And my experience was so much more private than hers. So it's a really scary thing. And I feel for her. And I also appreciate, I'm glad that her like counselor is saying, no, get out there. And that, Bethany has the bravery to do that because speaking from our experiences, this is extremely hard to do.
Yeah, it's very hard to do. Thought that was an interesting point, like that you were making, that when you start to branch out, that you realize your community has a lot of conflict within itself.
Yeah.
When you've been taught to believe that it's very black and white and that your community it has the truth and it knows what the truth is. And then you realize like, oh shit, nobody actually knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah. And maybe they even disagree on what the core values of Christianity are.
Yeah. I'm really, really happy that she has this older woman in her life that can encourage her to foster relationships with people that are different than her, because that is what Jesus talked about, honestly. I think that's kind of what the core of Christianity should be. But I related so much when she was saying, like, I don't know what you guys want me to do. Like, I relate to that so, like, that gets me so hard, because when you were first leaving the faith, that there was a lot of just different opinions, not as many differing opinions as Bethany probably experienced, given that she's has a public platform, but just like opinions from people from my past mission community. Like, there's this one memory I have of when you had deconverted from Christianity already, and you were just like in the beginning stages of starting your YouTube channel. And I think we had just like told my parents about it, because we didn't tell my parents that you had a YouTube channel for a while.
Yeah.
And we had just told them. And so I knew that my whole missionary community was going to know about it if my parents knew about it. And we went, or no, I think you weren't there. It was just me. I went to a wedding of someone from my past mission community, And, you know, all of we call them aunts and uncles in the missionary community. Our aunts and uncles, other missionary people were there. And there was one of my aunts asked me like what my husband did. And I hadn't really talked to, like, this was my first time ever talking about his YouTube channel publicly. And I said, oh, he does YouTube. And this lady's son was standing right next to her and like started laughing, thinking that I was joking. And then when he saw that I was serious, he was like, oh, okay. So that was a thing. But then she like asked, well, do you agree with what he says on his channel? Clearly indicating that she already knew about it and that she knew what it was about. And she was trying to like get information from me about like whether or not I agreed with him.
Yeah, digging for some gossip. Basically.
Yeah, basically digging for some gossip. So like that was just one experience of many that I've had with people having issues with, you know, us leaving the faith. I hadn't even left the faith yet then.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I liked how Bethany was saying that she had that experience of just wanting to be told what to do because we're kind of all programmed with that. And then she's like, wait, why do I think that? Why do I feel that way? You know, she didn't expand on that much, but at least what I'm intuiting from that is that she recognized that she was thinking in that way and thought, no, maybe I shouldn't be trying to just look for somebody to tell me what to do. I should wrestle with this. And that is, I don't care if you call it deconstructing. I don't care where that leads to exactly.
Yeah.
I just think that having that experience when you've been raised in any kind of family or community that tells you just listen to authority and that's it. Like it's a necessary experience to have for growing up.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're raised fundamentalist especially, that experience does not happen until you get to be older and married. And I mean, it didn't happen for me until I was older and married and had a job and all that kind of stuff. And Bethany's going through it now. I'm glad that she has someone like Dave. It seems like they have a good relationship. He can support her. She has friends that can support her. But again, with a public platform, it's got to be difficult to go through that.
Yeah, especially since she's built, it's not that she just has a public platform. She's built an entire career on her faith, you know? And so I can't imagine like all the implications of like what would happen with Girl Defined if she like changed her position on like various faith topics. Like I can't imagine like what's going through her head in all of this.
Yeah, and anything like that, I mean, it would have to be a process because that's like a pretty big change. You can't have the realization that, maybe I shouldn't just kind of regurgitate what my community's always told me, and then like take that and instantly be like at the end result. Yeah, that's like, you know, it takes a while.
Yeah, so. Deconstruction is a very, very slow process. Yeah, a lot of the time.
I think online people are just mostly confused. I think they think and are wondering like if I'm deconstructing with Dave, if I've changed a lot since then. And I don't know. I think we were talking about this at breakfast, just like, well, if you are getting together with people that think differently than you, then you must endorse everything. So like for you, you'd be endorsing everything I think, and I'm endorsing everything you think. And it's like, no, we can actually get together, extremely different, really respect one another and build friendships while also still really holding our own beliefs. And that's okay. So I haven't really worried about the online discussion as much because there's always conversations online. I think the hardest part has been those more like in-person relationships and just, also like people are just very like curious and even like texting me and wondering and like, so it's just been really bizarre. And I think it's really challenged me to evaluate like, what is the core of what I believe? And why is there this almost like pressure to kind of like stay in my bubble? And why do I want to stay in my bubble? And what am I afraid of, you know? So this has been definitely challenging for me because the truth is I am around a lot of people who think just like me, you know, well, then I'm married, so it's not. But in general, you know, and that's not something that I want to necessarily be true for the future. But it can be hard to know how to break out of that. So yeah, it's my breakdown moment.
This is amazing. Wow. I'm so inspired by you.
They're so supportive of each other.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Even though they ideologically are very different at this stage in life, they're still so supportive of each other and wanting each other to grow and learn together. And I think that's really the hallmark of a strong relationship, is that you encourage each other to be better people. That's what like Drew and I talk about all the time.
I mean, if you guys, maybe this is flattering ourselves, but like, if you guys want to see what I think our relationship was like when I had left Christianity and Taylor was still a Christian, this is what it looked like.
Yeah.
Like it didn't look different than this.
Yeah.
You know, and we ended up here where we are. And that doesn't mean that, you know, our position where we are now is like the absolute best and there's not people that are better than us or something like that. But not to say, I mean, I think that the way that they have their relationship there predicts a healthy long-term relationship in the way that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's another reason that we can extend empathy to both of them, even though Bethany has spread a lot of like harmful ideas through her social media.
Yeah.
I still have a lot of empathy and understanding for her because I see both of them as us. You know, we were in their exact position. We know exactly what it feels like. I know that Bethany, while yes, she's caused harm for sure, it's never been a place of malice. She genuinely believes that what she's doing is helping people. It's very misguided, obviously, and that's not to excuse it, but it does help us understand, you know, the reasoning behind it.
Absolutely.
I really did like what she said about, you know, we can sit here, the four of us, and be friends and have great conversations while also not necessarily endorsing one another's viewpoints. Because I'm going to bring up the Fundy Snark subreddit.
Yeah.
If you guys don't know what that is, it's basically a subreddit for users to snark on Fundy creators, people like primarily Girl Defined and Paul and Morgan, if we're being honest. That's pretty much what people talk about in there. And it's kind of like most snark subreddits do. It's devolved into just straight up harassing and bullying specific creators.
I mean, like specifically talking about the way that people look, calling people ugly, saying people's names are stupid, saying that people's babies are ugly. It's like
really bad.
Yeah, it gets
really bad.
I mean, it's when people talk about Reddit atheism, Fundy Snark has gotten to the point where it's as bad or worse than any Reddit like r/atheist thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's
targeted harassment.
When you're talking about people's children and stuff like that, it's really fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, people will basically like stalk people like Bethany's Instagram, and they'll screenshot things that she posts and will, you know, make fun of how they look or make up some sort of crazy story about them that's not true, that just because so many people repeat the story, it kind of becomes canon for Girl Defined. It's terrible. But there is kind of this sentiment within this Fundy Snark subreddit that what Zelph is doing is harmful because they're platforming people with bigoted views. While I can understand, I guess, the concern there, my thing is the thing that can be the most moderating of someone's view of the world is to interact with people that are different than them. That is like the most moderating force.
Yeah.
So if our end goal is to have people like Bethany recognize the harm that they've caused and the harmful views that they've held and correct that and stop spreading it online, then we should be encouraging these types of relationships. We should be encouraging them to reach out to people like Zelph and create a friendship. I understand like being afraid that maybe they're platforming bigotry, but from this conversation, that's not at all what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people talk about this video on there and say, you know, this happened at timestamp such and such, this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened. And then like, I mean, dozens, if not hundreds of people respond and say, I didn't watch it because I don't want to give them any support for this. But now that I know what happened in the video, then I've made up my mind and my opinion is this. And it's like, but you read someone who hated it summarize parts of it.
Yeah.
And now you're making up your mind entirely on what it is. I mean, isn't like the deconstruction space supposed to be about like critical thinking and skepticism and like trying to overcome our biases and things like that? I mean, I'm sorry, you can't.
Yeah.
You know how we talk about how things in the Bible were like this big game of telephone, you know, like someone said this and then they repeated it and it became like this and the story became like this. And eventually you get very, very far from the truth, the original story, how it really happened. Yeah. That's exactly what happens in these subreddits.
Yeah, I've seen things talking about this video that I'm like, how did you get that from? They'll just say like they said something that they completely did not say at all. And then people will like repeat that.
Yeah.
And act as though that is the truth. I think the biggest issue that I have with people in this subreddit is that they basically decided, because there are these creators that have views that we disagree with and are causing harm, that basically we can fair game them. It doesn't matter if we're making up lies or exaggerating things or making fun of the way they look. They are on the other side. They disagree with us, and so it's okay. And my thing is, like, realize that when you do that, when you paint this group of people as absolute transcendent evil, that you're basically doing evangelicalism without the religious part.
Yeah.
Because you're still feeding into that us versus them narrative. It doesn't matter if you think that you're on the right side of that us versus them, you're still feeding into it.
As someone who has been in the atheist and skeptic space for a while now, I can say that I felt like and I've never really talked about this actually, I got sucked into something that I see as very, very similar to what's happening in the Funny Snark subreddit right now. And that is the anti-SJW, like, Reddit community, you know. It was a pretty brief time for me that I was getting like worried about like, oh, like feminism or something like that. But I was able to recognize it for what it was after, I don't know, a matter of a few months, I guess. But there was a brief time when I would see a response video from someone like Armored Skeptic, and I would think, what's happening at this like feminist conference that he's talking about? Like, that seems like it's a little overboard. Obviously, I believe in like women's rights, but whatever they're doing here seems to be just kind of like ridiculous. And then I would be in certain subreddits, like, you know, r/skeptic or atheism around this time was pretty anti-SJW. And you would get in there and hear people talking about things that happened at the conference, or things that Steve Shives said, or what Rebecca Watson said. And I'd be like, wow, Steve Shives sucks. Like, I hate this guy now. And there would be layers upon layers upon layers of lore about this. And I developed this like strong disdain for specifically Steve Shives and Rebecca Watson. I'd never once watched any of their stuff. And the first time, over probably like 3 or 4 years later, I watched some Steve Shives and Rebecca Watson stuff. I was like, they're not that, they didn't say that. Like, they're not the people that I thought. And maybe I didn't like that they said this or they did this, or I would have said it differently or something like that. But the point was, I was in a community that I was allowing to inform me through the telephone game. And I was seeing certain people as fundamentally other, to the point where I was thinking of them as being kind of a form of transcendent evil. I was also very freshly out of evangelicalism. I was doing
you still had that mentality. You were just doing it on the other side now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like it actually was like, it was people who weren't ex-Christians. This is primarily a polytheist friend of mine who helped me realize, like, dude, you're literally just doing evangelicalism, but you're an atheist.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
So you got to realize that you have to take a step back from that and understand the fundamental psychology of what you're going through is not different just because you have a different like theological viewpoint. And with the incredible destruction of secular communities that the anti-SJW movement did, yes, because of its politics, absolutely, but also because of the psychology that it cultivated, that it approved of within its members, I hate seeing something not politically the same, but psychologically the same happening in the Funny Snark subreddit.
Yeah.
I don't care if, you know, Paul from Paul and Morgan, someone that I think does a lot of harm with the things that he says, is the target of it. That doesn't excuse the fact that you're still going too far and you're still creating a community that not only destroys lives on the outside of it, but especially destroys lives on the inside of it. You are not going to be mentally healthy if this is how you are going about forming community in deconstruction.
I mean, I completely understand the need for having the catharsis and to have a space where you can get out this frustration that you might be feeling. Maybe you're interacting with people in your real life that have a lot of the similar views to Girl Defined, and you're feeling very frustrated with them and you want a space to vent in, basically, a safe space for that. That's totally valid, and I think that there needs to be a place for that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that basically targeting these handful of very small creators and getting your catharsis through by kind of monitoring everything they do and spreading misinformation about them, I don't think that that's the way to do it. I think that there needs to be another way for people to do that.
Yeah, it's not just about that it's, you know, a bad thing for the people on the other side. You know, take that element out of it away completely. And it's still unhealthy for you to be engaging in this.
Yeah.
These communities that form through vitriol and hatred and bullying, they don't create friendships and community that actually last.
Yeah.
I know. I've been a part of communities. I've been on boards of communities where this has happened before. Mutual enemies and mutual hatred does not allow you to heal at all.
No, I think it's a terrible idea to form a group identity around your like all mutual hatred of specific individuals. I just don't think that that's a great idea.
Even if the individuals
Call me
suck.
Controversial, but like I don't think that that's a good thing for us to do.
Yeah.
And I know people are going to say, well, it's a snark subreddit. Like, what else do you expect? And it's like, yeah, but a lot of the people in this subreddit also claim that they care about deconstruction and that they care about kind of changing the narrative surrounding religious topics. So it's like, I get it, but also, no, that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. I think if you care about changing the religious landscape in the US, snarking on subreddits literally does not do anything at all. I don't think it does anything at all. Zero.
Yeah.
It would be better if you had one conversation with somebody who is a fundamentalist, actually.
Yeah.
I think it would be better if you want to create content or something like that, you want to post about it online, like obviously we do that. I think it can be a very helpful thing, but that's different than snarking. Yeah. Snarking is for you. It's not for anyone else. And I don't think we need to get that twisted.
It's hard because I think snarking and gossiping has its place. I think that if you are really frustrated with Girl Defined, I think maybe going to a friend and gossiping about it, I think that that's an appropriate way to do it. But in these like public forums where things tend to like snowball out of control and what you're saying is seen by these creators a lot of the time, I don't think that's the place for it.
Yeah.
I think snarking itself is not bad, but the medium in which you do it matters.
Yeah.
And I think we should be clear that we're not saying that people shouldn't ever talk about Girl Defined or Paul and Morgan or whoever.
Right.
But people can make videos. I mean, if you want to post in the subreddit and say, in this Girl Defined video, Bethany said this, and here's why it's problematic. I think that's great, and I think we should be doing that. That's not what people are doing.
Yeah, that's not what it is.
No. I saw something recently where there's basically like this rumor that was created in the Fundy Snark subreddit about Paul and Morgan, and that the reason that, because Morgan, I guess, used to be on some medications for mental health, and the rumor is that Paul forced her off of those medications because a lot of the time those medications can interfere with your sex drive, and he forced her off of it for sex, basically.
And how do we know this?
We don't. They've never once said that. They've never once hinted at anything like that.
Okay.
She did quit her medications, as far as I understand, that was her decision to do that. It wasn't motivated by anything Paul said.
Yeah.
But because that was repeated so much in the subreddit, it's become canon of Paul and Morgan. So it's like, that stuff needs to stop. I don't understand the desire to make up rumors like that about people in the first place. But like, this stuff is, if we actually care about these people reevaluating their harmful beliefs, doing this kind of shit is not going to accomplish that.
Yeah.
If anything, it's going to make them stay within their religious community even more, because it basically fulfills the persecution like complex that they already have. They already have this idea that the world, that non-Christians are horrible and are going to persecute them. So when we do that, that only just confirms in their mind that that's what the world's like.
And even
so it's
without
like we're
that,
shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, even without the persecution complex or the narrative that they have there, it would still do that, because it makes the deconstruction community look like it's horribly, incredibly toxic, which this subsection of the deconstruction
I mean, the subreddit is not like the entire deconstruction.
Right, yeah, there's a lot more outside of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, this part of it is getting as toxic as like the anti-SJW Reddit was a long time ago. Again, politically different, but psychologically, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Anyways, you can see the ice that I've been holding this whole time because we have the air conditioning off because it makes a noise. So I've been holding ice in my...
Yeah.
I didn't realize you could see that. Anyways, that's our little, what do you call it?
That's our rant.
Our TED Talk on Fundy Snark subreddit. Okay, so before I play the next clip, just to give you guys some context, from here they discuss how Zelph first heard about Girl Defined, and they also talk about how Dave and Bethany first got together. And I wrote in my notes that the way that Dave and Bethany talk about each other is just so loving and respectful. Like, Bethany is constantly praising Dave and like giving him compliments, and I think it's so beautiful. Like, obviously, we don't know what they're like when the camera's off, but from what I'm seeing, it's like they are relationship goals in my opinion. I don't know. I was gonna say, I almost feel like they're like a few steps ahead of where we were at this point.
I mean, they are older. Like, they're a little bit older than we are right now. And so
maybe that's playing into
I think that plays more into it, just because I think they're a little bit more mature than we were when we were 22 years old. So
this year's the first year I've ever like really even come face to face with the idea of like, oh, you know, like there may come a day, and like who knows, in the future, it could be even like the near future, where like Girl Defined either has a drastic change or kind of like comes to the end of its existence as it's been known. Not that there's a plan for that, but like realizing like, oh, this, like, it's okay to do things for a certain amount of time and enjoy what happened with that and move on to something else. And it's not like a bad thing or a sad thing or like a failure. There just may be like a new season. Life has changed, thoughts have changed, or just like the timing has changed. And so I think I used to be devastated at the thought, because I found so much identity in what I did and the accomplishments that I had. And so really like realizing that my identity isn't in that stuff, and I don't have to be like this super like outward looking successful person who's got like the next book contract, you know, like that. Like we don't have any more book contracts, and I've never felt more like relieved and so excited, because it's like that's a lot to commit to. And just, but back in the day, it would be like, oh, okay, when we publish this book, are we going to get another contract? What's going to be next? You know, go. And I found so much like worth in that, I think, in a really unhealthy way. And so when you're not growing, when you're not getting that next contract, when you're not like, why aren't we invited back to that speaking, you know, or that conference? It's like so like devastating. You're like, and so just over the years, like really working on where I do find my identity and realizing it's like has nothing to do with that, even though I mentally knew that. It's been so freeing. So I'm so excited for the next year or two, because I really think there are some big changes that are going to happen in the online space, in Girl Defined, in our life. And to me, that's like, that is so energizing, you know, and to just feel kind of like the future is very open. And in a lot of ways we get to choose. Like we're just, because things have been like, this is what Girl Defined look like, this is what our life has looked like. It's like, no, we can make choices and we can kind of create some really exciting things.
That was my favorite part of the video.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you can, you know, give your thoughts, because I'm sure I'll have plenty.
I mean, I think it's very, very encouraging that she's like open-minded about what Girl Defined will look like in the future. And she's open-minded to the idea that things might change. Her views might change.
Yeah.
And seems like she's willing to adjust her views given new information. It's kind of like the vibe I'm getting from this. And I think that's really good. And also, you know, she was talking about how like in the past, she's been very in work mode and very concerned about her next book, or like what Girl Defined is going to do, and like growing the ministry. And I think now that she's not as concerned about that, Girl Defined like seems to be kind of slowing down. That channel is definitely not growing. And she's like realizing that her identity and who she isn't that. I think this is the perfect time for everything that's going on with Dave and his deconstruction and how that's affected her. I think the timing is really good with that, because she's kind of in a space where she's naturally given the opportunity to kind of like expand her mind and think about things without having the pressure of like her career that she's built on her faith to interfere with that.
Right.
So I'm like, I think that's really positive, and I'm looking forward to, again, seeing where Girl Defined will go with it. One final thought before you jump in. But like I said in the intro, I was kind of discouraged when I saw their video that they came out with recently about women being in the kitchen, and we responded to that video, and I kind of felt like, oh, it doesn't seem like Girl Defined is really changing that much. And I've thought about it more, and honestly, it kind of makes sense. I think this is what we can expect in the early stages of someone being in deconstruction. There's going to be a lot of cognitive dissonance going on. So on one hand, she might be saying like, hey, yeah, I'm wanting to grow and my views have changed about this. And then a week later, we'll say something that's like, well, it doesn't really seem like your views have changed on that, because there's a lot of cognitive dissonance and a lot of like struggles that she's dealing with right now. And so I think while it's kind of discouraging maybe to see, it makes perfect sense for where she is. And it's not necessarily an indication that like they're never going to change.
No, I think that's totally true. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance, and there's just, when you're deconstructing, there's a lot of things that you think through a lot of different things. Your ideas change about a lot of different things. You think that you've become very open about a whole lot of different things. And then, you're talking about something and you're like, wait, I haven't really opened that one up and explored that completely. Why do I think that? And sometimes you've already had a conversation with someone where I remember one. I remember a one for me that's a good example of this. So in senior year, I did this, I don't know, let's call it like a food drive. You know what I'm talking about? To where, I got the cafeteria of our school to donate a bunch of food to a homeless shelter. and a local reporter from like the local newspaper came and talked to me, and she asked me what motivated me to do it. And in doing that, in creating this like charity drive type thing, I remember thinking, because I was kind of starting to deconstruct a little bit, you know what, I'm really doing this because I care about the people. I'm not really doing this because I think it's what God specifically wants me to do. Yeah, maybe God wants me to do it, but I'm doing it because I want to see good in the world. I want other people to live well. I want them to have food. That's really all it is. But when the reporter asked me why I did it, I said it was because, and there was no one else around to hear this, it was just the reporter. I said, I did this because it aligns with my Christian values. And she's like, why did you choose this homeless shelter? And I was thinking, it's the biggest one. They have the biggest freezer.
Yes, it aligns with my Christian values.
Yeah, and I said that. I was like, they're Christian. And that's, you know, when you get like, when you wake up in the middle of the night stressed and you just remember all the things dumb that you've ever said in your life, me telling her that is one of the things I remember the most, because I had not opened that one up.
I don't think that you need to guilt yourself over that, because I think when you haven't completely thought all of these things through, you're going to default to what your position was or what you thought before, because you don't know what else to say, especially when that's what is expected of you.
Right.
So it's like, I think it's only natural.
It's going to take time to, you know, overwrite that.
Yeah.
So the reason that this was my favorite part of the video is that, remember when I was doing a couple of collabs with Sean McDowell?
Mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, you know, he's being so nice to me. He seems to be so open-minded, and he keeps saying, Drew, I want to just listen. That's all I want to do. I just want to listen, and I want to understand. I hope you realize that, like, in my heart, that is my only motivation. And I believed him.
Yeah.
I don't believe him anymore, but I believed him, and he really did just listen and ask me really good questions, like he really wanted to understand. And, you know, I won't go over everything that happened there, but at the end of the day, he didn't change his opinion about anything. He didn't temper any of the language he ever used. He didn't seem to understand what problem I had with him.
He couldn't even repeat back the issues that you had.
Yeah. Yeah. And even at a certain point, a ministry started to quote something that I said in one of our collaborations, and they credited it to Sean, and like they started to spread it around. People were saying, this is so great, this is so wonderful, and they thought it was great coming from a Christian, but they didn't realize it came from an atheist. Anyway, there's an Instagram post of that out there from STRU. I like this so much because what Bethany is doing here is honestly a much further and much better version of what I hoped to see in Sean.
Yeah.
From working with him. I didn't expect him to recant his positions. I didn't expect him to question his Christianity in any way whatsoever. I thought that there was a possibility that he might say, you know, I have had this perspective, you know, voiced around me so many times that maybe I didn't consider this. And you know what? I'm going to be open to this and realize I might not have realized this because my identity was getting in the way. My identity as an apologist was getting in the way. That's why I think it's okay to pretend to be an atheist in front of high school students and say things that are stupid on purpose to make atheists look stupid on purpose, you know? So Bethany is saying that she realizes how her identity is tangled up in her content and in the position that gives her with other Christians in her life, whether in real life or online. And she wants to purposely disentangle that, however painful that is. And it is painful to do that. I really respect that somebody as a creator is willing to talk about that, willing to do it and to talk about it publicly. I mean, I think I feel like I have a personal insight into how hard that is. Yeah. And Bethany's doing that. And I have nothing but respect for her in that.
And it seems as though she's not just saying the things that she thinks she's supposed to say, because as we've seen, she has changed a lot of her views, and her views have become moderated. Like we saw that in the Paul and Morgan 24 Hours with, it was clear that her views about modesty and even thinking that it's okay for her to look at another man and think, yes, objectively he is attractive, and realizes that that's not a threat to her marriage. That is so much progress. That is
it is.
That is a lot of progress. And so I don't think it's just her saying the right thing. She's also backing that up through her actions.
Yeah.
It seems like. I mean, obviously, it seems like with the Girl Defined like main channel, they do seem to backtrack and kind of repeat a lot of their older positions. I'm hoping that that's going to change, and I think it will change. I think it's that both her and Kristen obviously isn't really in this process of deconstruction.
Yeah.
But I think they feel so tied to what Girl Defined has been. I think they're not even sure yet how to kind of change how they talk there, and like how to equally represent Bethany's new kind of view of the world with Kristen when they don't necessarily agree now on a lot of things.
Yeah. I've heard some talk, you know where I'm talking about what should happen with Girl Defined, and the impression that I get of what people expect as the only positive outcome is for Bethany to completely and totally say Girl Defined was always horrible, and I recant everything I ever said, delete everything, and be like, Kristen, I'm never going to work with you again, and all of my family are horrible. That reminds me of when I made videos. I made this video a long time ago called I'm an atheist activist in the closet. I had like 20,000 subscribers, and I talked about that. Like, I was doing atheist activist stuff and making content, and people commented on a video where I was saying, if any more people find out that I'm an atheist, then like my life is going to get really horrible. I really care about these people. I'm not really sure what to do, but I also know that I care about this enough to where I need to keep going. I had a lot of people comment, and this is the least helpful type of comment: stop being a little bitch and just tell everyone that you're an atheist, cut them all off, and say, fuck you.
Basically, burn down your entire life.
Yeah, burn down my whole life, completely and entirely commit social suicide. Yeah. What they wanted was for me to be where I am right now, 6 years later, within a day.
Well, it's not just that they wanted you to be where you are right now. They wanted you to completely cut ties with family.
Yeah, and that's not like, something I've done. I never considered that. Right, and I don't think that, I don't know Bethany's exact situation, but I don't ever like recommend just cut off all ties with such and such.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that each person has to individually evaluate.
They have to make that decision for themselves. If they choose to go no contact with a family member, that needs to be their decision.
Yeah.
Not like outside influence. I mean, as I understand, their mom seems to be a little
rough with the situation.
But I'm sure that it actually is a very complicated situation, and how they feel about their mom. They might not necessarily agree with everything she says, but I'm sure that there is some sort of like loving-ish relationship there.
Yeah.
So to be like, you need to never talk to your family again and completely burn down Girl Defined, like.
Also, I mean, Girl Defined has employees, and they probably financially depend on this. And I realize that, yes, like, it sucks that they financially depend on something that's doing harm. Yeah, that's bad, and that does need to end. You can't. That's not a simple thing to do, though.
Yeah,
it's going to be a process.
Factors involved with
like,
that.
People still need to be able to make rent. People need to be able to feed their kids.
Yeah,
and so it's going to be a transitional process.
Yeah,
and I just think that Bethany's probably going to know how to do that better than me. I hope that she would do it in the way that I would do it if I was in that situation, of course, but I'm just not going to pretend that I know how to do it better than her, because I just don't.
Yeah.
And no one else does either.
The direction that we're going, it makes me very excited even for our kids. Like I want to raise them more in this way.
Freedom.
Yeah, so much more freedom. And I mean, looking at the comments and stuff, everyone's like, wait, Bethany, what's going on? Like, it's Bethany, you know? But it's like, the reality is, like, I'm still definitely hold on to my Christian faith. I definitely identify as a Christian, and I very much hold to the core values of what being a Christian is, you know, belief in Christ and on the cross and the resurrection and all of that. But it's a lot of the just like very secondary and beyond issues that are a matter of conviction that I just like, that just used to be so primary in my mind, and it's just so not anymore. And it's scary when that is so much of kind of like the culture you've been a part of, to move away from that. And to many people that looks like, well, you're just like losing your faith, or you become like less of a Christian, whatever that means.
My primary critique of Girl Defined was always, they think these cultural elements of evangelical like fundamentalism are the core of Christianity, and they're just cultural elements that are very recent, very modern. And she's literally saying that's what that is, and I'm not that anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, you have listened to the critique that I have.
Yeah.
That's the primary one, and you were dealing with that. That's amazing.
Yeah. What I would like to see is kind of incorporate this new belief now of not being concerned with, like, I guess they call them the secondary things of Christianity, or the minor things. Unincorporate that from your Girl Defined stuff, because it does seem in the Girl Defined stuff that you do kind of see those things as primary.
Yeah.
So, and maybe they're already trying to do this. Maybe they're already trying to shift the focus of what Girl Defined is. But I would like to see more of that. And like with their new book, I know that it is transphobic and
Talks about LGBT stuff.
yeah,
right?
it's like,
yeah.
if you guys see that as like not necessarily like the core of Christianity and not really that big of a deal, why is it still things that you're putting in your books, you know?
Yeah.
And like, maybe that book was written a while ago and it doesn't reflect her current thoughts.
Yeah, that's the thing with the book, is that it's quite possible that it was written before she thought about this stuff, and she's literally legally not allowed to pull it. That is a possibility. I don't know. I just think it's something to consider when saying like, oh, you know, well, if she had a spine, if she was moral, then she would pull the book.
Well, but then also Kristen's still involved with that.
Right.
I don't think that she's changed a lot of her views. So like, I don't know how that would work.
And her employees and all these things. And yeah, so it gets pretty complicated. It's unfortunately not really as simple as that. That doesn't make what they're saying in the book okay.
Yeah.
It just makes it to where it's not as black and white of a situation as, well, if she had any guts, then she would just pull the book. It's just not that simple.
Yeah.
But it's like, I feel more of a genuine relationship with Christ, less of this like performance based than I ever have before. And again, like, this is what I want to pass on to my kids. And so, yeah, it's just like, it's a very exciting time for me, even though it's the book. You and Dave know you're looking this interfaith relationship. It's like, this has done more good in my life than most other things.
Come on now.
It's crazy because like he helps me to be a better Christian, you know, a better Christian. Like, that's the weird part about it. Like, he's not trying to deconvert me. He's sharing what he believes and what he thinks, but I'm, you know, still holding on to my faith, and I want to at this point. So he's like, well, let me help you be the best Christian that you can. I'm like, you know,
Dave.
Yeah. And it's really cool. So it's like, we're both, I think, trying to help each other grow and in the best ways possible, and really support one another, and not trying to like make them what we want them to be. So I really admire that about you, and that's really cool.
It reminds me a lot of my approach with you.
Yeah.
I don't think that I necessarily was like saying I'm trying to make you like a better Christian or something like that. I was just more like, I don't care whether or not you're a Christian. I just, you know, I want you to be a good person. I want to be with you.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I guess that would mean, I want you to be a good Christian in your own eyes, I guess.
Yeah, I loved how she said that this has been like one of the best things that's happened for them, and has like really bonded them together, is what it seems like.
That's what we always said.
What it was for us too.
Yeah.
And I think why is because you're coming from a place of honesty. you're sharing your experience and where you are in life and saying like, this is what I'm thinking right now. And you can be honest with your partner, and to not have your partner shame you or guilt you when you express those things, I think is something that's so bonding, and like kind of you get more love for each other through that.
Oh yeah.
I think we probably didn't do it perfectly. And I know that like when you first started like deconverting, I didn't always handle it the best way, but I feel like in the end, it really made us closer.
I think it benefited us. Absolutely.
Yeah. I also love that Dave is encouraging her to be a better Christian. He's not pushing her to deconvert. And honestly, I don't really want Bethany to stop being a Christian. I don't think that should be the end goal.
No, it shouldn't be the end goal.
I think the end goal is for her to figure out what faith best fits her, if it makes her personally fulfilled, and not have that faith or belief negatively affecting other people. I think that's the end goal.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the alternative to that, saying like, no, she has to deconstruct because this faith is fundamentally, sexist, homophobic, it's bigoted in all these different ways. I think it just commits the exact same fundamental fallacy of essentialism that the anti-theist crew on like r/atheism tends to fall into, saying that you're fundamentally irrational, you're fundamentally a worse person if you believe this, and that's because the faith is essentially this. It has this real substance, and if you have a form of Christianity that doesn't fit this certain mold, this certain archetype, well, that's not really real Christianity. And we can credit secularism and humanism and whatever else you want for all the good parts of that system.
You're still thinking like an evangelical.
Exactly. Yeah, you're still thinking like a fundamentalist or an evangelical, and it just that's not how this works. That's not how like religion scholars look at any of this stuff. Yeah. I think that it's a really regressive view. I think that what you said is fantastic. However, she is treating herself and others the best. That's great. If there's a version of Christianity that's a part of that, then that's great.
Have your views shifted at all around, like as you've become less legalistic and more open? Has that played into your thoughts on LGBTQ issues? Just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you were saying earlier, Sam, about like love being like the main thing, and then like there's things under that. For me, like at the end of the day, it's like I wouldn't want any belief, any orientation, anything to ever interfere with the way that I care for someone, love someone, welcome them into my home. And I guess my hope is that even if I hold a different belief or you hold a different belief from me about that we can still, like, my heart truly is that I want people to like thrive and have the most meaningful, well-loved life possible. And like for me as a Christian, particularly, like I still at this point, like believe for me personally that God had a specific design with that. But it's like, it doesn't, I believe that because I think that is the answer to the most flourishing life possible and the most, I guess, abundant life, whatever, however you want to say it. But that I don't force that on anyone or think that you have to do that. It's just a belief that I hold, but I don't want less happiness. I don't want like, oh, well, then you shouldn't be with that person. It's like, this is what I believe because I think this will make everyone like the most fulfilled. But if you choose something different, that doesn't change my perspective, my value, my love toward that person at all. It's just like if Davey grew up and he were like, I'm gay. It's like, literally to me, I'm not gonna, I'm like, I love you. Come in my home. Come, bring your person with you. Like, I will love you and have open arms, just like I hope you would do for me. And it's hard. Like, I don't know, like, is there a world where we can hold those different perspectives and see the heart for someone like me isn't because I want there to be like laws against that, or I don't want people to find happiness. It's like, I'm not going to ever dictate that on anyone personally, but I can hold a belief that I think is true And at the end of the day, we're all hoping that everyone has like that experience of love and happiness, but we just, our approach to it and the way we go about it, like we believe that there is a different way to get there, you know? But I'm like, you know, Tanner, just the way you are, it's like, I have so much love in my heart for you. And I like, you're welcome in my home, come back, you know? And I hope that you can have so much like grace and patience toward me, just knowing like, okay, is her mind going to change one day? Who knows, you know? But like her heart is for people to be loved. And I might not agree. And I think that view is harmful, but you know, like she really is trying, you know, and this is where she's at. But you know, for Christians who are like, oh, I will then like trying to make all these rules in place or trying to like really genuinely not having open arms, or like Christian parents who literally like don't, you know, love their children. Like, I think that's horrible. And I don't agree with any of that. So I would hate to be lumped into that category as well.
I understand what you're saying, and I relate to that.
Well, it really seems like she's made a lot of progress when it comes to LGBT issues. She's not completely where I think that she should be.
Yeah.
But the fact that she isn't trying to force her belief onto other people, it doesn't seem like. And I'm not sure if it's included in this clip or maybe in a different part of the video that I didn't include, but they do talk about a little bit about how she doesn't think it needs to like there shouldn't be laws written to prevent people from marrying who they want.
Yeah.
Kind of like briefly mention that. So it seems like it's really more her own personal belief.
She does use a lot of, it's a personal thing. I think this is good for me. Like there's a lot of very personal language like that.
I do still take issue with it because I think the focus seems to be like, this is my belief, not just for myself, but for other people.
Yeah.
For other people, I believe that they would be happiest and most fulfilled in a heteronormative relationship.
Yeah.
I think the focus is still on like outward other people.
Yeah.
And it would be a different situation if she said, for me, the way that I'm most fulfilled and flourish is to be in a heteronormative relationship because I'm straight.
Yeah.
You know, like that would be okay. But to still cling to the idea that other people need to be adhering to your belief in order to be happy, I think can still have, there's still harm that's coming from that.
Yeah.
So maybe eventually she'd get there with that.
Yeah, it's difficult because, you know, you don't want to say like, oh, it's okay that she thinks this because she's going to change her mind. But like from my own experience, I remember being there when I was a Christian and basically being like, pretty much exactly what she said. I don't want to force this on anyone. I don't even want to bring it up. I don't think telling someone what they need to do is going to make things any better for them. I do kind of generally believe that like if everyone was heteronormative, that like might be better, but like, you know, really kind of burying that a lot. I remember being there and I did eventually get to the point where I was like, why am I burying that all the time? Why do I look at this and think that it's different than the other things that I think everyone should be doing, like, I don't know, loving their neighbor or something? And I just eventually realized like, oh, it's not actually harmful. It's not actually bad for anyone to do. You know, you can be in a good or bad relationship, gay or straight, whatever. That's not the thing that determines whether or not a relationship's healthy. So yeah, I agree with you that I wish that it would be different, but it does seem there's some progress here. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I'm curious as to where this will go. I'm glad that she's at least, like, for the Christians who are no doubt watching this, modeling someone who is saying that the thing that needs to be most important is loving someone and accepting someone and not trying to force away some part of them. I mean, that's a pretty big step from where like Girl Defined was when I first saw it, you know?
Yeah. It is still like it's interesting because they still on the Girl Defined main channel talk about what a true, like what being a woman is and God's design for femininity and God's design for women. I don't know. I think it goes back to there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that's happening. I think she says one thing, but then kind of gets drawn back to her like previous evangelical way of thinking and says another. I don't know.
It's going to happen. I mean, really, for me, my ultimate conclusion with this is I'm just interested to see where it goes from here, because I suspect this is not really the end point. Yeah. I hope it's not.
I appreciate your openness and authenticity about that. Mm-hmm. And I do think it's important to be able to talk about it without just, reverting back to our echo chambers.
And I think even if people are very
I just want to pause this to add a little bit of context. Tanner before this was talking about their experience being homophobic back when they were more religious, and how it was really someone that met them in the middle that made the difference. So they're talking about like the importance of meeting people where they're at.
Even the people that aren't even able to meet in the middle and are really like low down, like I feel like there's kind of a view often that like we shouldn't have too much compassion for them, because like the view is so harmful that that it's like enabling to have too much empathy for them. But I think we both understand how when you are in that space, not that it's all about you, but it's like there is, unbeknownst to you, often like deep suffering accompanying that, because I feel like Alok talks about this a lot, but it's like what you're demonizing in others, you're demonizing in yourself. And so the permission you don't feel able to grant to others is permission that you aren't able to give to yourself. And there's a deep grief in that people aren't even necessarily aware of yet. And it doesn't, I'm not just saying like if they're gay, but like gender expression being a good example of like there's ways we've all been sort of like put in a box because of gender stereotypes and have suffered because of it and have been limited in our ability to fully express our humanity in a lot of cases. So yeah,
it's like the strict patriarchy hurts men too, because like you have to be this ideal thing. If you're not that, you're less than, you're unworthy.
Yeah, so it's like it's not even that it's like, oh, now they can meet in the middle. Now people deserve. It's like I truly do think people deserve compassion at every single stage, because, and again, that's not to like diminish the fact that people on various points of the spectrum may be like participating in harm and like perpetuating it. We can hold space like that. We can hold that to you. But I don't think that has to take away from that.
That's incredible.
That's a point that I've tried to make on my channel, and I kind of feel like Sam said it better than I have.
She said it, perfect.
It was really great. It really is that I actually think that having compassion for and being able to even recognize what compassion would look like for people that are causing horrible harm is really important for one's own personal growth. Mm-hmm. I think that Frank Turek is one of the most harmful apologists out there. What he's doing is poison. And yet, I find myself thinking, do I think that he thinks this? Do I think that he's doing this because, I think that he's just fundamentally rotten to the core. He's a piece of shit and I hate him, and that's why he would do it, is because he's an asshole. Or am I thinking, everyone is complex. Yeah. There's a multiplicity within everyone. And am I having compassion for the experiences that he's had so that I can understand better what is going on in this situation? And it's not even for his benefit. It's for my benefit.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if our end goal is to make progress, then recognizing what the real problem is, recognizing what is really happening, not that Frank Turek in this case is this evil monster that's like just knows what he's doing and he just wants to destroy people and destroy lives, but recognizing he genuinely believes this and there are factors that contribute to why he genuinely believes this. Recognizing that can help us actually address the problem.
Yeah.
Because you're actually looking at the real problem. And like going back to the funny snark subreddit, it's like turning Girl Defined, turning Paul and Morgan into these monsters. You guys are attacking the symptom of a problem and not the problem. You're not considering the evangelical community that they're in, their family, the culture, the institution of evangelicalism that they're a product of. You're not attacking or recognizing that. Instead, you're just attacking the symptom. And I don't feel like we're ever going to make any progress if we do that.
No.
We're just going to be like going in circles.
You'd be a lot better off spending your time advocating for better public schooling. You'd be a lot better off, like I said earlier, having one conversation with a fundamentalist in real life. I think those things would help you treat the core of the problem better than just wrestling with the symptoms all day.
I mean, I think that's not to say that you can't have your own personal boundaries. If engaging with an evangelical is just not something that you're in the place to do, then that's totally fine to have the boundary.
For sure.
Need to be able to rest and recuperate from the religious trauma that you've experienced. And that might include like really distancing yourself from that.
Yeah.
So like you don't have to do those things, but that would be a better thing to do than just like posting on Reddit.
Yeah.
Can I ask another even like personal question? Like, what's your like relationship with God like? Like, what do you pray about? What do you meditate on? Like, what? And that like the real, just like in your heart, Bethany, just between you and God, what's that like?
I mean, I've definitely had to question and think about a lot. Not had to, but I have chosen to. Just my full view of God, because of Dave's experiences and what he's been going through. So it's definitely the last few months have been interesting for me in that way. But for me, I like when I think of God and I think of my relationship with him, I personally just find like a huge sense of like love and security. Like my view of God and my, I guess, personal experience with him feels very loving and very, very like safe and very much like, and no matter what's going on in life, like I can turn to him, I can talk to him, I can trust him, like I can bring all my cares to him. And it's, you know, like this might sound terrible to some Christians, but it's like, I think growing up, especially like through the end of high school, I felt a lot of pressure to like perform certain specific Christian duties that proved you had the kind of right relationship with God. So you had to read your Bible this much, you had to do all these things. And honestly, kind of like when I got married to Dave, I really didn't like that. And I was like, I don't want to have this like rigid check the boxes kind of relationship with God. And so I often don't have like a set routine of like, this is when I read the Bible, this is my devotional, this is what my prayer life looks like. It's much more of trying to have like a real relationship with him. I don't even know how to explain it. And so prayer for me, sometimes it looks like, you know, pulling out my journal and like writing out all of my thoughts, almost like journaling, praying. And that can be like a super meaningful way for me to like connect in my relationship with God. And sometimes it's just like, oh, I'm, you know, just kind of struggling with something and I'll just like be in the room, like kind of like praying or, you know, be driving in the car and praying.
I think that's great that she does that. I think no matter what faith background you have, just carving out time in the day to meditate or pray or something like that is really important, and it can improve your mental health overall. I mean, for me, I've started doing some like little satanic rituals. I'm just like, and I have a journal and I'll like write out just different things I'm thinking about or goals or just, I don't know, any thoughts that I have. And I think that helps me kind of like reorient and focus a little bit more on like the things that I want to cultivate in my life. And I do that in a completely different like faith, I guess, framework than she does, but the concept is still the same and the effect that it has on my life and on Bethany's life is the same.
Yeah. I'm glad this seems to be another symptom of her removing herself from a legalistic authoritarian outlook on faith. I think that's really healthy and I'm happy for her. I remember in college, when I started to kind of have more this orientation toward time with God and worship and prayer and things like that versus the way I was brought up with, things got a lot healthier. And those are really some of the only times that I like it. That would be nice to have, you know what I mean? Looking back today.
is everyone being emotional? Yes. But I mean, in some ways, and this is like, I guess maybe like super, like probably like too honest to share, but I think that I think with everything that's going on with Dave and stuff, like in some ways I have felt like God is a little more distant, and haven't felt as close to him as I have in years past. And I think it's, it's just like there's a lot going on. And so as much as I, as a Christian, do believe and have felt that as such a sense of peace, I think that I am going through a lot. And I think that sometimes it's just like, to be honest, like not always the place that I want to go to, it's like, it's like, I struggle sometimes. And so, having like that mentor I've talked about so much, like going and meeting with her, like that has been like one of the most encouraging relationships during this time. And she's like an amazing Christian woman. And so more like the I guess the real representation of Christ in my life more than like my direct relationship with it. For me, that's probably been the most, in the way that I feel most connected to God right now. And that's been super encouraging because I think I need like that, those real life relationships. Like in a really, like I just need that right now. And so I don't want to, I don't honestly like try to overthink it or analyze it or try to be like, why do I feel this way? Or what's the, fear of the future or what's going on or God. I just kind of like letting it be and not stressing about it and not worrying about it, and not worrying about what all that looks like and trying to have all the answers to everything and figure everything out. I'm kind of just like, just letting it be. And that's been helpful. But sometimes I do feel kind of like overwhelmed or just kind of like discouraged or confused or just like really like just like a big question mark,
When I was deconstructing and you would kind of ask me questions about things that I thought, especially like early on, about God, and it would make you say, well, I don't really know. I don't know then. I don't know. What should we think about God then? Seeing the pain that you were obviously feeling in that moment was the thing that made me feel like the worst about the whole thing. And it wasn't that I thought, we're never going to be happy not believing in God or something like that. It's just that I understood that this transition obviously is a really big deal and really difficult to go through, no matter who you are. And just seeing Bethany say all these things really takes me back to experiencing that with you when we would drive between our parents' houses and where we lived during that time as a long road trip. And we would talk about that. And I just have a lot of really vivid memories that feel a lot like this conversation I'm watching right now. So I'm glad that Bethany has Dave, but it also is just kind of like, to me, this shows how authentic I think this really is and how vulnerable Bethany's willing to be. Yeah. Which is wild.
Yeah. To admit, I feel distant from God. Like I feel more distant from God right now than I have before in my life, I think is like a very, very vulnerable thing to share, especially to two people that she's meeting for the first time that have very different views of God than she does.
And you know how many Christian narratives there are about being with someone who's not a Christian?
Yeah. Like that's like the one thing that you're like really not supposed to do is to be, what do they call it?
Unequally yoked.
Unequally yoked, yeah. You're really not supposed to do that.
And I'm sure that Bethany, she's already saying that she's hearing all these narratives from different people. She's hearing these like complaints and criticisms from people in her life that matter to her. And so for her to be willing to say that when in a way it's like fulfilling a narrative I'm sure she does not want to fulfill in their minds, that's brave. Yeah.
And I think it makes perfect sense why she feels so distant from God. I know that that's how I felt at that time too. Like I have a memory of like one of those car rides back from between two different places, I guess, which I won't say, where I think it like for the first time really like sunk into me that I didn't really have the answers, or I didn't know if God was real. Like for the first time, I was like genuinely did not know. And I remember like just like the hopelessness that there was in that. And I can like see that in just the way Bethany's responding. It's like I just really, really feel for her in this, and just having that question mark of not having all the answers for stuff. And what does that mean? I remember like growing up, I thought to myself, you know, when I get older, maybe all these bad things will happen to me, or maybe I might end up being like doing something bad. I don't know. I just like had all these like scenarios of bad things that could happen to me, or things that I could do wrong. But I was like, the one thing that I always will have is that I'll always have God. I'll always be a Christian. Like no matter what happens, like that is the one thing that nobody can take from me.
Yeah.
And like that was the one thing that like I lost when I became an adult. So, you know, I can completely relate to and understand like the pain that she has right now.
Absolutely.
Final thoughts here. I mean, I want to give props to Zelph on the Shelf for this video. I think it was very, very much needed. And I think that videos like this, where we're kind of seeing Bethany more candid and it's not something that she has scripted and written out for Girl Defined, I feel like this is when we're really seeing Bethany. Like I feel more, you know, this is totally parasocial, but I feel more connected to her as a person through like videos like this and Paul and Morgan video, because I feel like she was being real. And I just hope to see more of this in the future. And I'm excited to see what the future has to hold for both Bethany and Dave.
Yeah.
My final thought is I do feel I was a bit harsh, I think, in my last commentary video on Girl Defined. I think there was more progress happening than maybe I was giving them credit for in that video. So this, I'm really happy, again, that Zelph did this, because I think it really changed the way I view Girl Defined, and it changed my perspective on them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and a huge thank you to my patrons who help make these videos possible. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my Instagram is Taylor_the_antibot. And if you'd like to consider supporting this channel financially, a link to my Patreon will be down in the description, and we'll see you all in the next one. Say bye.
He's too sleepy to wave.
I'm so tired.